So there's a lot going on the planet right now, as there always is, but right now it's really coming to a crescendo of energy. And there's so much intensity, I think more and more people are beginning to pick up on. And it can be quite challenging for some, especially when one doesn't have their foundations. This can throw people very much out of balance and be very traumatic, confronting, disillusion, all these different things can come from these experiences. I was having some Tulsi tea, which is really good for, calming the nervous system, nourishing the body, helping that foundation stay stable. So what we all need to do right now is have self-care as priority. And that self-care can allow us to come into the alignment or the balance within that we need to be in to navigate through what is going on right now on the planet in all its intensity, with all these different narratives going on. One must have great discernment and be very much attuned to an inner knowing and wisdom that has considered all possibilities without bias, that has researched deeply into things, from all different perspectives, and really looked beyond the parameters of what the status quo thinks, because that can often be a distortion. So there's a lot to achieve here, but we can start off simple, and all the change is always from within. So the more you can nourish your body and take care of the physical, the emotional, the spiritual self, and stay connected to the energy of the higher force, whatever that connection is for you, however you achieve that. Everybody has their own ways of connecting with this. It could be creativity, meditation, certain practices, but the utmost integrity must come with this for it to be successful, and honesty with ourselves and with the process. And this process can involve a lot of shadow work as well. There's a lot of new age ideas that healing is just fluffy and shiny and all about love and light and happiness and just bliss. And that isn't always the case. Of course, we're going to have moments of this, yet there needs to be a very deep processing of our shadow self, which is just ourself. It's not like it's something separate. It's not an entity. It's just programming, conditioning, wounding, trauma, all these different things compounded in the unconscious that we haven't shed the light of our awareness on, and then actively participated in the transmutation process to realign. It's like when your neck or your back is out of whack and you feel all crooked and uncomfortable, and then when you finally get it put back into place, you feel that alignment of the energy coming through the body. That's a very physical way of looking at it, but it can also be on an emotional level and spiritual level. So this is all intertwined, interconnected, symbiosis. Like everything is symbiosis, it's the microcosm, macrocosm in that sense, and we're connected to all of it. So we can start on a personal level with cleaning out our own bodies. This needs to be done with great care and caution. You don't want to be too extreme with this process. Really good way of beginning is to bring something into your life that you know is going to be beneficial, and let go of something that isn't so much. So a good example would be drinking Tulsi tea instead of coffee or something like this is a very simple way to transmute something in your life actively that may assist with one's well-being. Well, it will. You drink less coffee, your nervous system's going to be a lot happier. And I'm telling myself this because that's my big vice, is coffee. So having the beautiful herb like tulsi, or I also really like licorice tea, licorice and peppermint, or these have very nourishing properties that are going to help all my organs, they're going to help my nervous system, all different elements in the body, the digestion, all these different systems, which are all, you look at the physiological systems of the body, and they're also connected with these emotional and spiritual astral systems as well. So we're about house cleaning on all different levels. And then, you know, we can begin to take action in the world, doing what we're passionate about. And that's part of it as well. Part of that coming into alignment is to really connect with your true calling of why you came to the planet, with that utmost integrity also. It's not just some fanciful, you know, ego gratifying calling. For example, somebody who wants to be famous for the sake of being famous, just for the glory and for the attention and the narcissism that could come with that. It's more wanting to give your highest potential to the world. It's like that self-sacrifice to be able to assist in others' reflecting and healing process, as well as your own. So once again, that symbiosis going on with the way you're sharing and connecting and healing via that. Healing itself is something that you want to achieve, so you become healed instead of always healing. And that's why the shadow work is so important, and one must keep revisiting, because there's going to be many layers, and some people have been through more trauma than others. Some people have been subjected or more vulnerable to certain mind distortions, for example, ways they've been manipulated within their cerebral kind of programming. You know, that there's blocks, there may be altars, there may be certain propaganda narratives that have ingrained themselves, dogmas, programming of some sort, that needs to be dismantled in this process also. And we've all got it to some level, especially if you've grown up in a modern society with, you know, all the entertainment, the propaganda that's intrinsically interwoven through this now. And that also comes back to discernment. When exposing yourself to certain things, like what are you watching? What are you absorbing? What are you reading? You know, what's the intention of the person creating this? And becoming quite aware of that, because we're receivers and transmitters of energy, and we need to be very aware of what we're picking up on, because certain things can have less pleasant effects on the symbiosis of the body and the greater harmony of the planet. And then, you know, working through our community on that level, we can create ripples out into the wider world through that positive interaction and giving. And I think the entire paradigm needs to be shifted so this is actually really encouraged. Because right now we have education systems that are built on competition and segregation and compartmentalization and reductionist thinking. It's very materialistic. It's very narrow-minded. It's very much with the blinkers on. They're not really looking at the whole, the symbiosis. They're just looking at these phenomenological parts. And yeah, there are connections, but maybe not seeing it from that greater perspective, because the education systems don't encourage that. Once again, they've been infiltrated with these social constructs and certain propagandas and dogmatic philosophies, control mechanisms. All this NLP stuff is interwoven through it, and a very biased position on many topics, because certain interests are invested in having that opinion hammered to be fact, when it's a subjective opinion, and it's on an objective level that it could actually be seen as fallacy or a distortion or half truth or an absolute lie, altogether bullshit kind of thing. But there's always usually partial truths in the distortions to make it sound more plausible. And for people who haven't done that research to look into things on a greater level, will just see it as truth because it sounds plausible enough, even though there may be many things in there that are quite confusing. This is often very much a thing. A good example would be, certain things they put in the water, saying it's good for something, and it's not. And yet there's two different things with the same name. One is a mineral. So there's a calcium-based one, which is actually a trace mineral that's really good for the body. And then there's another one that has the same name that is a neurotoxin and a carcinogen. And it's a byproduct of certain industries, like toxic waste byproduct. So it's actually very, very harmful. And it's put in our liquid, many liquid suppliers around the world, as to subjugate and medicate and slowly contaminate the public with this substance on a small level. But the more, we all have a lot of liquid, so unless you're getting water from a more clear, pure source, be aware of this and seeing if you can limit this consumption or completely eradicate it altogether. And reverse osmosis may be a big solution for a lot of people, because they may not have access. I've noticed this traveling the world. I'm very fortunate. I've been to different places, different continents. And one thing I noticed was the most intense thing was finding pure, clean water in this day and age is very difficult. And I've been very, very, very fortunate throughout most of my life to get very clean water. And I've become a little bit of a water snob. I'm just very hypersensitive, and I can't drink shitty water. It takes me a while of adjusting before I can actually even absorb it, because my body's so used to more pure forms of H2O. So when I have the more contaminated version, my mouth won't even quench. It just stays dry, and I get headaches, and I feel sick, while other people can drink it and not even notice. So it's just that acute hypersensitive reaction due to having more of a pure constitution with this certain element. So I think we can clean the water of the world again and stop these additives from going in, and finding other ways of cleaning it. Like the osmosis remineralization technology will definitely have to be used, because so much is being contaminated, and what we have left needs to be valued, and not in a elitist sense, in a sense where everybody still gets access, but it's done with reverence instead of this bizarre attitude that we have with all nature's gifts. It's seen as this commodity, and it's got to stop, this whole paradigm based on parasitism, you know, taking until there's nothing left, like bleed it dry kind of attitude. This shit has to stop. We need to go back to a more local based production, especially of our food supply, and also other things. But the food is integral. At least 90% of the food we eat should be grown locally, and it is possible. Some areas may need to use other techniques like aquaculture and hydroponics and stuff like that to achieve this, but I think permaculture can be a primary solution for a lot of the local food supply, because, yeah, once it's established, you can have quite an exceptional yield, and using things like really good composting systems where all the compost is recycled and put back into the soil, and also, using things like effective microorganisms, this kind of microbiology, regenerating the soil with microbiome techniques can be absolutely exceptional for really bringing life back into the soil. If you've got enough compost, you can use stuff like biochar, which is burning like bits of fallen wood into a charcoal and then breaking it up, and then using some liquid tea compost and your effective microorganisms, putting this liquid into the biochar, and it soaks it up, and then put this into your soil, mulch it, and the biochar is porous, so it gives a home for the effective microorganisms to live. You can also use lactobacillus microorganism, which is also very good for the environment, especially good for veggie gardens and stuff like this, fruit and veg. But the Indigenous microorganism technique, look it up. I'm no expert, but I have made it before, where you are using fermented rice, and you put the fermented rice culture out in a local area, healthy natural area where you live, and you absorb the microbiome from a healthy ecosystem, and then you put that into your culture, and then you make a solution of this and spray this in your garden, and it regenerates. If you give it the right home to live in, it's going to come back, and that is like one of the most important things on the level of the earth, but also on the level of our physical bodies. And we need to reseed our gut, but to actually come into alignment also. So putting back the good microbiome in our gut flora, because it's been so destroyed by the Western modern society and the lack of fermented foods and the antibiotics and all these other pesticides and chemicals and carcinogens that all kill gut flora and create leaky gut and all these issues, IBS, and so on. It's a downward spiral from there, because all disease begins in the gut. So we need to become really aware of what's going on there and giving our tummies some good stuff back. And the way to do this is what I'm talking about with the soil. To get healthy gut flora, you've got to give back to your soil through that permaculture system and that regeneration of that local macrobiotic food. Then by eating this, you're getting this back into your body and into your gut flora, and then your overall physical and mental health is going to be a lot better. So that's a really important one on a very physical, practical level. And of course, there's going to be certain foods that we may not be able to grow in our area. And in that case, if there's ethical, trading done between areas, I think that's absolutely fine. If we have ethical ways of transportation, using free energy technologies, this stuff is out there. I'm no expert, but I know it's around. It's been around for over 100 years, over 1,000 years. It goes way, way back, thousands of years actually. But in the last 100 years, there's been patents actually sitting there in our current memory, whilst thousands and thousands of years when we had Viemanas and all these other trippy technologies of Atlantis and the mirror and all that, we had free energy. We've just forgotten. So there are ways we could teleport things using probably our consciousness as a technology when in alignment also. So yeah, taking this into account. I know it sounds far-fetched, but I believe it's a real possibility. And yeah, if we can teleport things, it's not so much of a hassle, is it? You know, we can still have our cacao from you know, Peru or whatever, if it's grown ethically, and the people that grew it are looked after, and the environment that it was grown in is looked after too. So this is why I emphasize that monoculture farming needs to be curbed, like at least the large scale stuff. It needs to be, if it's going to be monoculture, be a small organic monoculture using all these composting techniques I'm talking about, and probably some other companion plant, at least one just to assist with the natural environment, and surround that monoculture with full indigenous species to regenerate the surrounding land, so it can compensate for the fact that that space of land is growing a monoculture crop of hemp or cacao, something like this. The good thing about hemp is it regenerates the soil, it puts nitrogen back into the soil, so the legumes. So there is positives of growing that in areas where we've already depleted the soil with monoculture. We could probably start growing things like this to regenerate. And then crop rotation is really important. So after a few crops of hemp, some legumes, you can go back to other plants, more permaculture style farming once again, and just keep rotating, because we have so much land we've raped and destroyed through this monoculture technique. So we really need to start regenerating the soil and cleaning it up. And there's got to be ways to get this toxic carcinogenic stuff out of our soil and water. I know mycelium has properties, you know, Paul Stamets and people like this have discovered, you know, ways that mycelium can eat toxic waste, and, you know, oil byproduct stuff, plastic even possibly. So yeah, mycelium and planktons, yeah, these are two biotechnologies, like real biotechnology, using the natural earth biology in a sophisticated way to assist. And it's quite a rebalancing process, and it takes a lot of research and study to actually do it correctly, because there's been cases where people will put something into the earth to recorrect something and it becomes a problem itself. So yeah, this needs to be taken into consideration. Like the cane toad here in Australia, brought it in to eat, what is it, off the cane, something off the cane, and then it became a pest itself, and now it's taking over half the country, and it kills all the other frogs. And so one needs to be discerning when one is playing this game. But we've already, as a human species, done so much damage in these systems and these complex, you know, symbioses that were there originally. We do need to recorrect, and this is with our physical selves and the environment we're in, and we can all play a part with that. I think plastic has to go. That is, it's not that it has to go, we can still have plastic, but it can't be produced anymore. So we've got to stop the manufacturing. We already have plastic, we have shitloads of plastic there already. So plastic needs to become an economic product, you know, like it's on the economy, like gold and silver, you know, it's seen as this very sophisticated, expensive, you know, product, a commodity of the earth, and it's valued on the economy. Why can't we do this with plastic waste? So people are encouraged to go and find solutions to actually mine the plastic waste out of the natural environment, so it's cleaning up and it's reusing this plastic, melting it down in some more less toxic way, which is a bit of a contradiction there because plastic is toxic. And somehow using 3D printing to recreate and recycle all the things we need that need to be made out of plastic still, that can't be replaced with plant-based cellulose plastics like hemp and mushroom and yes, plenty of cellulose-based plastics that are possible now. I've seen them, and they're just as good for all the or non-reusable products. So, for example, people buy a packet of chips or something like that, and it's made, or it's packaged in this plastic shit, or the Glad wrap on everything. And it's heartbreaking. I just think of all those microplastics and how they're going into the frogs and our guts, and the insects and the animals. All these different creatures are absorbing this. It's polluting everything. You know, people need to really start being aware of this, and that we need to stop doing this, because it's choking us and it's choking everything. So we can use these plant-based plastics that are non-toxic and compostable, and just go straight back into the compost and actually feed your soil once again with the right substances. So I think all carcinogens need to be stopped being produced in general. This is disgusting that it's even allowed, that we can make these carcinogenic chemicals and say it's perfectly acceptable, and then wonder why everyone's got fucking cancer and why our environment is out of balance, because these carcinogens also kill the good microbiome, and they also affect the absorption of minerals into the body. So things like heavy metals, for example, cling to the T receptor cells and inhibit the absorption of things like zinc or magnesium, because there may be another more harmful metal there in its place. So the two main causes of disease, which, as I said, all start in the gut, are toxicity and deficiency. And these are two things that we very much have because of modern society. So we need to become aware of these root causes and why this is going on, and what's causing it, and how to restore and regenerate our bodies with natural medicine. And there's so many different incredible healing techniques and research and technology and all this available, even looking at cannabis oil and the profound effects it can have on healing people. There's so many different things that can be used. Herbalism is absolutely astounding. And I wonder, whilst all this stuff has been going on in the collective, how little it's spoken about. Why are we not talking about echinacea and elderberry and boosting the immune system and managing viral issues with these incredible panaceas that are grown naturally on the earth? And you can grow in a pot yourself and harvest and drink in a tea and know it's not going to have any side effects. It's not going to make you feel sick. It's not going to damage your DNA. It's just going to make you feel better, you know. And look, it may not be miracle whiz bang straight away. Some of them are, though, you know, and it might depend on your constitution, feeling what herbs you actually need. So really attuning ourselves back to that part of ourselves, growing our own food. If you don't have time and energy to grow your food, be part of a community and support a local community gardener, you know, a market garden, permaculture garden, you know, community where you've got people, you know, growing on a small scale and connected with the entire community through their distribution at farmers markets and things like this. And also in terms of animal products, I think this also needs to go back to a small scale. This mass slaughtering is absolutely disgusting. And if people want to have animal products, I think it needs to go back to a more traditional way, because there is a symbiosis with these domesticated animals and the human species now. So that needs to be respected. And these animals need to be treated a lot better if this process is going to continue, which in a way I think it will have to, because something like a chicken is almost dependent on humans now. So if everyone went vegan, all the chickens are going to have problems, because they're going to still be laying eggs and they still need to be looked after, but nobody wants to eat the eggs. No one looks after the chickens and they become extinct. So we need to really respect these little guys and look after them, and all animals and all plants, and really restore the indigenous plants in areas as, you know, proper sanctuaries for these animals and plants and insects and all these creatures to live. we really need to share this earth with them. At the moment, you know, the amount of species being eradicated is absolutely insane, and, you know, especially predator animals, because of the mono meat industry. You know, you've got, you know, giant herds of whatever, and they're taking up the land for the predator animals, and the predator animals want to hunt them, but they can't, while they used to be able to. So, you know, there's all these issues here. So yeah, I think things need to go back to more original tribal kind of sense, with some forms of food production, but we can also use positive innovation and technology to make it easier, so there's not as much manual heavy labor involved, and there's more innovations to assist with the yield, you know, and our cultivation process. For example, something like acacia, there's certain varieties of acacia seed that can be eaten. It's highly nutritious. You can make incredible like breads and cakes and stuff like that out of this. You know, we could be growing this in drought prone areas. But I think once the soil's regenerated, you'll notice a lot of these areas that have drought will all of a sudden rain, because of bringing in plants again, and that brings in animals, and it brings in this whole life cycle. So yeah, I know I've gone on tangents with this, but I'm just doing my best to kind of think of everything and realize that we don't need, you know, genetic engineering to feed everyone. We just need community gardens and yeah, maybe a few people that are actually paid to manage, you know, things on a deeper level with these gardens. But everyone contributes a little bit, you know, it might even be for an hour a week, just to, you know, keep it flowing. You might go out and feed the chickens, or, you know, plant a few things. But in return, you get so much. And even exposure, like touching the soil, like healthy soil, is good for your body, and you absorb the microbiome even through that process. And that also comes back to grounding and getting our bare feet on the earth, and reconnecting with how we are part of the earth and the elements, you know, and we can't forget this. We need to empower ourselves by this and respect this within and without. Yeah, there's so many more things to say, but I think I'll just stay with that right now. Yeah, a lot of things need to change. And as I said, the paradigm needs to be re-geared with the economy. So we need an economy based on integrity and ethics, where people doing things that are assisting with all these things I'm talking about, and assisting our community and empowering individuals as a whole, are rewarded, and they don't have to pay tax, and they don't have to pay for things or penalized. They just get to do whatever they want, you know, if it's within those parameters. You know, they're not hurting anyone, they're not causing any harm, they're aligned with natural law, then they can continue on with their fruitful business and, yeah, grow all the, you know, amazing fresh stuff, or create some really cool product that heals people or whatever, and that's cool. But if you're a company that's built on environmental destruction, human exploitation, propaganda, slavery, all these war, whatever, you're penalized to the point where you can no longer operate. And all that money that you made is given back to the people who you've affected, and to rebuilding whatever damage you've done. So yeah, all these things need to be rectified. We need recompense for all these things. There's been so much injustice and terrible things going on, and, you know, so much this could be ended if we had free energy and local food supplies of organic, nutritious, healthy food, and regenerated ecosystems around us. You know, so many mental health problems, I think, would dissipate. So many people's lack of purpose and stuff would reignite and then reconnect, because we'd be encouraging a society that's about being in alignment and connected to your higher calling, your true core purpose here on this earth. So yeah, that's just a few thoughts.